Which running back prospect makes the most sense for the Dallas Cowboys in the 2024 NFL Draft? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers who can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $200 if your bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, we're discussing running backs. And believe it or not, Landon, I'm actually excited to talk running backs because unlike most people, I kind of like this running back class.
I do too, actually. And I didn't think I was going to. And frankly, there are some of the people that are on this list of guys that we're watching today that I didn't think I was going to like. And one in particular that I really liked that I really did not expect to before kind of really taking a deep dive into this game.
Yeah, so we're going to take a look at three running backs that have been the most frequently mocked to the Cowboys. That is Jonathon Brooks from Texas, Trey Benson from Florida State, who we found out today is actually a 30 visit for the Dallas Cowboys, and then Jaylen Wright from Tennessee. But let's start with Brooks because I saw on PFF, if you go to like the little mock draft simulator, Brooks, like the most common team that he's mocked to is like the Cowboys, like 56% of the time he's getting mocked to Dallas. What did you see when you turned on his tape?
Well, first of all, Jaylen Brooks is, reputation precedes him, right? Like, I mean, obviously, as a member of the Texas football team that was.
Did I say Jaylen Brooks? I meant Jonathon Brooks. I'm sorry.
You did say Jaylen Brooks, and then I followed suit,
yeah,
right?
Jonathon Brooks. I apologize.
Jonathon Brooks. And we even were talking about how his spelling really drives us nuts,
yes.
Jonathan, right? Before, obviously his reputation precedes him. Texas was very visible these last 2 years in college football. Not that they weren't previous to that, but they're constantly back. It feels like they were kind of back a little bit this year. And I feel like Brooks was a big portion of that. He's a kind of bigger, specifically taller back. He's leggy. He carries his weight very well. Like you see him measured at 216 and it's kind of hard to find that weight sometimes, right? He carries it high. Like I said, he does have kind of leggy build to him. His lower body is incredibly springy. He has these kind of coiled long legs, and I think that's what helps with that kind of start-stop ability that you see with him. He is got incredible vision. It feels like he sees all the pieces moving several steps ahead, and he uses his blocking well against them. That's one thing you see is he understands the blocking. He understands where the pieces are moving, and then he uses the blocking to kind of peekaboo behind the blockers to get around linebackers and choose a hole. I really, really like how he looks with the ball in his hands. Like that's the one thing I think I really learned the most about this guy after watching a bunch of his reps is that he, at a very basic level, a running back is someone who carries the football. And he, I think, looks the most natural, the most athletic, the most dangerous, as much as almost any of these guys with the ball in his hands. He's got great ankle flexion. It allows him with a forward-leaning run style, and he's still able to make cuts while at full speed, which is impressive to see while kind of leaning forward, right? He can disconnect his lower and upper body to juke defenders. You see that a lot when he kind of shakes guys. His hips will go one way and his upper body will go another, and defenders will kind of get on their heels because it's a little off-putting. He destroys pursuit angles with his usage of hesitation and his start-stop. He has a great combination of elusiveness and creativity. He, like I said, he uses that start-stop to duck around blockers and create lanes. He's a good receiver. He's comfy out of the backfield or in the slot. He's a hands catcher who converts to a ball carrier instantly after receiving the ball. I saw him line up in the slot. I saw him taking routes out of the backfield. He takes screens, he takes smokes, he runs Texas routes from Texas. He does all the things you want a running back to do as a receiver, and he does it from a couple different spots. He's a very, very good pass protector. Like he clearly enjoys it and is always a positive to the scheme, never the weak link. I think the thing that I look for when I look for pass protectors, want to is a huge part of it. The physicality aspect, the willingness to stick your nose into a defensive end when he's pass rushing, that's a huge portion of it. But the next step, like to go from just being a willing guy who doesn't know what he's doing, is a guy who is smart about it, right? You don't ever see him putting his tackle into a bad position because he had a bad chip, right? He chips the guy into the tackle's block. He attacks the defender's legs to kind of take them out. He's got great eyes. He understands where to be looking and where to be expecting defenders kind of looping around, and he always hits the right target. And he has very good technique in his punch and his block. He's especially excellent at chipping an end coming out of the backfield. Like I said, that could be a challenge for young backs sometimes. Despite being somewhere between them in size, I would describe Brooks as a lot more of a tackle breaker, closer to Tony Pollard than to Derrick Henry. He's not like he's not going to run through you necessarily, though I think he can do that a little bit. That's not necessarily his game.
He's going to run through the arm tackles, right? Like you hit him on the thigh, like he's going to. He reminded me a lot of Aaron Jones when I watched him. Like that style of running where there's some power, but not I'm going to bulldoze you over and give you 40 carries. Like that's just not his game. But he can play in space. He can play in zone. He can play in gap. He can play all three downs. There's a lot to like.
Well, and that's surprise. This is my guy that I fell in love with watching. And I think a lot of it is because you get shown the A+, this is where does he win, right? You get shown the A+ ball carrier stuff all the time. That's what to be expected as a guy that's, going to be the top of the running back class, right? Is that he's very good with the football in his hands. The thing that really surprised me is that he has no holes to his game. Like he's a B+ player at almost every other aspect of the game. Like he's a good receiver. He's a good pass blocker, and you combine that with the fact that he's got this aspect to him where he's an incredible ball carrier. I think I think that if he was healthy, I would be okay with him being a first round pick. Like, I mean, I think that kind of talented in the sense that I think he's not a player similar to him, but he checks the boxes a lot like Ezekiel Elliott did coming out, right? Where he's just very good and very well developed at all the different aspects of being a running back and is a natural. My only unanswered question is obviously he tore his ACL November 11th. How does he bounce back from his recovery on that? And what's the timeline before he gets the kind of springiness and really the start stop, which is a huge aspect of his game. When does that come back from?
Right. A couple of things. If you're watching with us on YouTube, we got some advanced stats for you. Rushing grade 91st percentile last year, missed forced tackles per attempt 95th percentile, receiving grade 94th percentile, yards after contact 82nd percentile. So from an analytics standpoint, very, very good. Another reason why I really like him is he's coming into the NFL at 20 years old, landing with 242 career carries in college. Like that's nothing, right? So assuming he can stay healthy, I would assume like you can get 4 to 5 really, really strong years out of him, maybe even 6 years without having to worry about the tread on the tire. The only big concern, I have two concerns. One is the injury, right? Like it's a little scary already drafting a running back that's coming off an ACL injury. Like there's a lot of good running backs. Do you really need to draft one that's hurt? And the other thing is he just played in the Big 12 where, man, he saw a lot of pretty light boxes where it's like, hey, it's a 6-man box and you don't have to, your vision isn't as tested, playing in the Big 12 compared to the SEC. But overall, I think he's worth a mid to second round pick, even with the injury.
Yeah. And I think, it would have been an interesting conversation to see where he would have gone if he hadn't been injured, obviously. But I think that, in a class that that doesn't necessarily have a headliner or a showstopper necessarily. I think he was that guy. And then unfortunately the injury happened on November, because he's just like, there's just so much as you watch more and more that he's just like, okay, where's the fault in his game? Where's the part that he really needs to like work on in his technique? There's some effort stuff, I think, at times. Like I'm not calling him like, lazy or anything, but there are times when I feel like he I don't know what's going on. Like it felt like he kind of gives up on a snap or something like that, but that's not happening enough to kind of really, take his grade down a lot. And honestly, I really think he's a special player, and I'm excited to see what comes out with after the injury.
To you, or for you, he's the clear-cut RB1 in this class.
Yes, I think he is. Yeah.
I disagree. Well, I'll explain why next. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. What's the first thing that you would do if you had an extra hour in your day? Would you go for a run? Would you take a nap? Would you read a book? A lot of us spend our lives wishing that we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so that you can go and do more of it. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for any reason at no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Just visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We want to let you know about Locked On Sports Today. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Are you having to turn down the volume because of all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that unnecessary screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Landon, let's talk about Trey Benson, who a lot of people have really started to get in on the last couple of weeks. What did you see from Trey Benson on the tape?
Man, just a explosive player, right? And powerful, above average size back. He's tall but nicely kind of filled out frame. Him and Jonathon Brooks are similarly sized, which is really really shows you why you can't just go by the numbers, right? Because they have very different body types. Like, you see Brinson, he's a lot more compact despite being similarly height, and he's I think he's probably got a good 3/4 of an inch of shorter, but still everything's just a lot more compact. Like his arms, his legs look, filled out. He's got muscles on muscles there. Whereas Brooks is a little bit more of a springy player, right? He has a galloping, powerful, upright style. And it's like, it's difficult to kind of bring him down. Like once he really starts going, like especially if he's gotten a little bit of a runway to get through the hole, he's so fast and he's so powerful that he breaks a lot of arm tackles, especially at the line of scrimmage. You even see him like breaking defensive line arm tackles, at the line of scrimmage. He likes to deliver a blow as a pass protector, but is usually a bit too high with his punch and is often only kind of partially successful. He's one of these guys that the physicality is there, like as a pass protector, but his technique is very slow. And I think we talked about with Brooks, right? That Brooks is very good about eye discipline and knowing where to be looking for targets, knowing, okay, there's a down block. A guy's going to be looping around. I need to keep my eyes out for him moving. He's never surprised. Brooks is never surprised by what's coming, and he's always in good body position. It feels like Benson isn't as experienced, right, at doing that. And I think he's still kind of getting to his targets late, and that is also contributing to some of the bad punch placement stuff. But usually what you're seeing with him is that he's trying to like punch the dude in the head. And you can't really tell if it's because he's trying to hit him high or if he's just at a bad body position and he doesn't have great hand targeting. But that's going to be a problem. If he's punching guys in the head, he's going to get, penalties called on him. His feet fire furiously. Like they never seem to stop moving. When he's running, even pre-snap, there are times when they'll motion him in from out wide, and he'll come stand next to the quarterback. And even before the snap, you're still seeing him kind of jog in place a little bit, keeping those feet moving. Because he does. It really feels like he doesn't have plodding feet, because clearly you've seen the guy run. But it seems like that's what he's trying to avoid. He's trying to keep his feet warm for when he's ready to really start going. His hands, especially in the receiving game, are a little bit perplexing. He has good technique, and most of the time when you see him, receive the football, he looks very natural. Like, it's not like he's not fighting the football or anything like that. But there were just like times when I saw him not complete the catch, and you feel like, well, I just saw you do that like 3 snaps ago.
It is frustrating.
Yeah, and so is it a concentration issue? Is it a vision issue? Is it that he just needs to kind of slow his process down and just make sure he secures the football before he gets upfield? I don't know, but it is kind of frustrating because it's limiting his game, and we'll talk about it a little bit further along. He is, like, overall, just the bottom line with this guy, he's an explosive north-south runner that uses his elusiveness while on the move. So he is an elusive runner, but he's not like Jonathon Brooks, where he's going to juke you out of your shoes. He's going to stop you. He's making moves while he's running at full speed so that you're not getting like a direct contact hit on him. It's almost like this guy named Emmitt Smith, whose name I just forgot.
It's funny. You just can't get a good, solid shot on him at all. It is incredible.
That's and that's what Emmitt's superpower was to me, right? Is that like Emmitt was never the fastest, he was never the strongest, but he understood how subtle micro movements that would put him out of the direct line of fire of defenders. And so it really kind of blunts a lot of his hits. If he gets a lane and an open hole, we talked a little bit about how he can run through defenders and, contact or whatever, but on the plays where he actually gets a hole, he will put linebackers on their heels because he is at the second level so fast that it's hard to believe, right? Yeah. And sometimes it feels, you see linebackers like reeling, like trying to figure out how to get their body into position to make a tackle on this guy. I really love the guy as a runner. Like, when he has the football, he's incredible. To me, the difference in this guy versus Jonathon Brooks when they're healthy is all in the pass game, right? All of Trey Benson's weaknesses lie in the pass game, right? It's all inconsistency. It's not like he can't get there. It's just technique inconsistency. He's inconsistent on his routes. He's just not very crisp in running them. I just don't think he's asked to do it a lot. And so he's not. Go ahead.
I would say this is why my comparison for him, I've changed it a couple of times, is he reminds me a lot of Jonathan Taylor coming out of Wisconsin, where it's another one of those big running backs that has home run speed. But Wisconsin just really never asked him to be a pass pro. And then there was basically nothing as a receiver. And that's okay because he's such a talented runner. I'm going to show you some stats from PFF right now. They're incredible. So these are over the last 2 years. 96th percentile rushing grade, 100th percentile in missed forced tackles per attempt. That's actually number 1 in the history of Pro Football Focus college tracking stuff. Nobody has forced a missed tackle at a higher rate than Trey Benson. 91st percentile in yards after contact per attempt. He doesn't fumble. Like, that's another thing that I want to mention. He has all these carries, 300 something carries over the last 2 years.
Which is crazy. Fumbles. Which is crazy for his receiving hands, like what we just talked about. Like, and that's why there's like a dissonance there, is that because you see that he has incredible coordination. So when he drops the ball and he does it, a little more consistently than you'd like, it's shocking and surprising, to be honest.
Yeah, he's my favorite running back in this class because I think one of the things he does really well is, like, once he gets to the second level, he can either run by your linebackers or he can convert that speed to power and run over your small linebackers. And there is a physical nature to his game that I'm just not sure Jonathon Brooks has. Now, Brooks is way more advanced in the passing game, as you mentioned. I just have no doubt that Benson can come in right away. And if you need him to be an 18 carry a game running back and convert on short yardage and hit home run plays, I think he can do that right away for you.
Yeah, honestly, the only thing my only concern with him is that I wish all of his issues weren't all tied to the passing game, right? Like I wish he was at least a solid pass blocker or just a solid receiver, or you know what I'm saying? Because like right as it is right now, I worry about his ability to get on the field on third downs, right? Like because like he
Probably.
can't
And
really,
third and like mediums the long, like third and short, he's on
yeah.
the field, but like
Yeah.
passing
Oh, yeah,
down
I think
situations.
more
Yes.
like as a third down
Yes.
back a
Yes.
role,
Yeah.
right? Like, I think right now, if the Cowboys drafted him, and here's where I ultimately end up. Real quick, where does he win? He's an explosive upfield runner. Unanswered questions: how quickly can he get on the field for passing downs? To me, if we're looking at it from the Cowboys' perspective, I've been kind of struggling with, okay, do I take Jonathon Brooks, who to me is the more complete player, the more, a similarly explosive, maybe a slightly more explosive player? I think is probably the better long-term solution for the Cowboys, right? Or do you take Trey Benson a round later, maybe? He can come in right away and produce for you right away at a high level. I feel like Benson may even be a better runner of the football in year one than Brooks because
Yes.
of the ACL and all that stuff. But you have to deal with the fact that he needs to be part of a committee. Like you're going to have to commit to having other running backs on this squad and someone who you're going to be able to feature in the passing game. So that's kind of the weight I'm having between these two. I really like Trey Benson. And even his pass game stuff, I think he will overcome it. He will get through it, and I think he will develop it. It's just about a matter of time of developing those skills.
All right, let's talk about a running back that is completely different from these two in Jaylen Wright from Tennessee. We will get to him next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The sports calendar is loaded, and FanDuel is making it even more exciting to get in on the action because right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $200 that you can use to bet on the college basketball tournament, MLB, NBA, NHL, and so much more. By the way, how much fun was that Iowa LSU game last night? It was great. So it was amazing.
Incredible.
Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet a big win with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We are discussing and debating the running backs that the Cowboys could target on day 2 of the NFL draft. And let's go to Jaylen Wright, who couldn't be more different than these two guys that we just discussed. What did you see from Wright?
Speed is what I saw from Wright.
Lots of it.
That's lots of it. This guy can really, really move. And he does a lot of moving. I'll say that may actually be a downside with him a little bit too. He's a little bit undersized. He's just under average height. He's a kind of a little bit underweight, but not like, notable. He's over 205, 210 pounds, I think is what he's listed as. So he has the kind of requisite size. He's not like a small back by any stretch of the imagination. And he has a very frantic running style. Like he has instant acceleration. That's kind of the bottom line with him. You saw that when he was running this 40, but you see it also on the tape. He is threatening constantly with hip jukes. Like it feels like when he has two running modes, right? Like I'm gonna like juke you running speed, and then I'm gone running speed, right? And when he's in that I'm gonna juke you running speed, it feels like he's throwing way too many moves. Like there are too many times when I'm watching him and I'm like, all right, just get through it. You're already at the second level. That linebacker's probably not going to tackle you anyways. You don't need to throw 4 moves. Just run. Just get north and south. And frankly, in some ways, he's almost like, I think Jonathon Brooks has the opposite problem at times. Like it feels like Brooks is too quick sometimes to get north and south when he can get around, when he has the ability to get around a guy, and he feels like he should. It feels like with Wright, he's showing off a lot of times. Like he's just like, I'm so much better of an athlete than you. I'm quicker than you. I'm going to get around you. But there are times when you actually see him with the runway. And he will, he's that. If you guys have a chance, go and watch Jaylen Wright versus Georgia. There's one run where he runs like a power run, and he is gone, doesn't even begin to describe it. He beats the angles. He beats all the angles. He outruns the safety and corners, and then he's pulling away at the end. Like it's against Georgia defenders. Like it's not like, you might as well be NFL defenders, right? He's just that kind of speed and that kind of ability. He's liquid mercury with the ball in his hands. Like he's just slippery like a punt returner. And like I said, he throws too many moves sometimes because he doesn't need it. The first move worked, man. The guy's on the ground. Like you just keep running afterwards. His whole game is feet, hips, and creativity. Right? It's the tie between his brain and his feet and his hips and his ability to use. It's one thing to have speed, but it's another thing to understand how to use your speed and your hips in a way that creates space. And that's one thing he does. If anything, he's, like I said, there's times when he's using it too much and he just needs to run. He opens up his stride and transitions from that kind of tackle breaker, speed to sprinter in an instant. But you can see it, like once he's okay, I'm free, I can go. Like he starts opening up that stride and it's like no one's catching him. He's a weapon in the passing game. He didn't run a ton of different routes, but he understands route leverage and how to make himself available. He understands how to find soft spots and zones. And any opportunity to get this guy the ball in open space is absolutely deadly. I mean, just because he's going to destroy tackling angles.
Yep.
He's going to be able to, there's a chance he's going to take it to the house. Bottom line, he's not tanky at all. He will absorb some hits, but he loses momentum and balance, which, is not surprising with this kind of running back. He's a very clean fit, in my opinion, for the Pollard role early in his career. Like, I think, in fact, he looks and runs a lot like Tony Pollard. So,
Yep.
Where does he win speed? That's what I put. It's ridiculous.
He's fast.
He's very fast guy. Unanswered question. How well does his game scale? Is he a committee guy that is like a juice guy as a part of a committee, or does he have it in him to develop as a kind of well-rounded back? I didn't see a ton of pass pro stuff with him, but he seemed fine at it. Like he didn't seem like he was overpowered, which was something you worry about with a guy his size. Overall, I really, really liked him. I really liked all these guys. I have to say.
They're all good running backs. To me,
yeah.
there's a clear top three. It's these guys, and then the fourth is like, do you want to gamble on Braylon Allen or Blake Corum or Marshawn Lloyd? But these are the three that I think are the most talented. I'm going to throw these advanced stats back up here if you're watching this on YouTube. These are 2023 stats: 94th percentile rushing grade, 91st percentile missed tackles forced per attempt, 93rd percentile yards after contact per attempt, 96th percentile zone grade, and then of course 97th percentile big run rate. I mean, he hits explosive plays all the time. Now, we were talking about how the Cowboys could maybe try to fix this backfield, and maybe you draft the guy that's more of the Tony Pollard, and then use your day 3 picks or free agency to find more of the thumper. This is the guy, like if you can get him, especially in the 3rd round, but like in a trade back from round 2, there just aren't many of these guys available that are like over 200 pounds and running the 4.3s. And actually he's 210 pounds. So there's really not a lot of those type of players in the NFL. My comp for him, going back a little bit, was Tevin Coleman, who played with the Falcons and played for the 49ers, a little bit more of like an upright runner. But if you give him a crease, like he is gone. Like nobody is catching him. I really like him. I think early 3rd round is probably where he should go.
Yeah, the great Matt Waldman put him on the spectrum of Alvin Kamara, and when I heard that name, I was like, wow, like yeah, like because he's got that kind of speed, and you're right, the combination of that speed with that size, and I just feel like there's more to him as a receiver than we've seen, and that we can still see in the NFL. I think he could have a career that's slightly different in the NFL versus college. But even if he kind of just continues down his current track, I think he is an incredibly valuable running back as part of a committee, as a home run threat. And with the opportunity to kind of develop into, maybe an every down guy. And if he really develops, I mean, he could be that level of kind of Alvin Kamara, borderline all pro, if he can figure out how to harness the rest of his game.
All right. The last thing I want to say on Wright before we go. Let's say the Cowboys sign Ezekiel Elliott to I did today.
I'm so glad we're making you talk about this.
Well, I'm just saying if you sign Zeke and you have Rico Dowdle,
yeah.
I kind of think Wright is the best fit with those two, right? Like let Zeke do some of the pass protecting stuff. I know he's not a great receiver on third down. Let him do a lot of the short yardage stuff. And let Wright be the guy that just gives you the explosive plays. Like it's not quite Tony Pollard Zeke back in 2021, but it might be close.
Yeah. I mean, I think that makes tons of sense. I mean, that's why I think you can make solutions out of any of these running backs, depending on how you assemble the rest of the crew around you, right? Like, I think that you can make an argument that if you get Brooks or, if you are able to land Benson, that you could probably get away with a pairing, right? Like with one of those, a Rico Dowdle, and then
that's why I want them to trade back from like 56 to like 72. Pick up an extra fourth round pick or fifth round pick, and then draft your running back there. Just because I'm not so sure. I think there's a good chance all three of these guys are available when the Cowboys pick at 56.
Yeah.
And I think there's a good chance that one of them is still available at pick 70. And I think that's just, I don't have a big enough gap between the three of them where I care too much. So if I can get an extra fourth round pick and maybe get some more depth at a place that I need it makes sense to me.
The difference to me in like value between the three of these guys is I think Brooks has more long-term value because I think he can be a high, but that's still a gamble because you're dealing with an injury. So yes. I'm not going to poo-poo anyone that feels like, hey, a trade back from 56 in order to get an extra pick and still probably be in a similarly good running back situation, at least for 2024. That makes a ton of sense to me.
Because I don't think wherever the Cowboys draft in the third round was at 86, 87. I'm less convinced that one of these three guys is going to fall, but early 70s, absolutely. I could see it.
Yeah, you're definitely going to be able to get a running back at 86, but if you want one of these top guys,
no, they're going to be gone.
You're going to have to figure out a way to move back from 56 well before you're picking in the 80s.
Yeah. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen of the day. Go check out our channel on YouTube. We post videos every single day over there. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosier, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.